Alright, we're back in the US Music Revenues file, and we're almost at the finish line with our visual for Maven Music. Now, the entire objective here was to be able to use data to communicate how the composition of the music market has evolved over time and the impact that the launch of iTunes in 2003 had on it. And now that we actually have it visualized here, well, how has the composition of the music market changed over time? I mean, what's the story here? Let's take a few seconds, feel free to pause the video, and let's think about it. Alright, so to me, it looks like there are two stories here. The main one is that even though physical formats ruled for a long time, it looks like digital formats dominate the music industry now. And the second is that it looks like overall though, the size of the music industry has fallen after its initial period of growth. So how can we use colors and labels and text to highlight these two stories? Now, I don't mean to sound like a broken record here, but this will be a common theme throughout this course. I do fully encourage you to take your own approach at telling a story here and giving your own spin on each of the projects that we'll be building. What I'll do is take the concepts that we cover in the course and put them into practice my own way in Excel, while highlighting pro tips that you guys can take advantage of here and in the future. So, going back to our story here, if the emphasis is on digital formats dominating the music industry now, then we can use color to draw attention to digital versus physical. And that's actually pretty simple. We can select our physical series and just use a color instead of the default blue that was applied here so that it doesn't take focus away from digital. So I'm going to right click, go to Format Data Series, and here in the Fill options, we can change the color to a gray instead of a blue. And if we deselect, we can see that now our eyes are immediately drawn to this digital instead of kind of looking in between both, while still not losing sight of the overall picture here. So that's the main story right there, the digital formats dominating the music industry now. And if we also want to show how the revenue overall has fallen since its peak, well then we can label the highest value here and the current value here. So the natural reaction would be to add data labels to each series. And remember, this is cluttered, so we don't want to include all the labels. We only want to include this maximum value here. And we could manually delete each one and just keep this one, but instead of that, I'm going to delete these. And since after all this is really just a static visual, we can't just add a text box and add the label in manually. So let's look for this value. It looks like it's around 2000. Let's go down, and the highest value is right here. So it looks like it's 22,381 million. And remember, we're showing overall revenue, so we do need to add the physical and the digital, even though in this case the digital is 0. So this is actually 22.3 billion. If we go to our chart, format, insert a text box, 22.3, whoops, 22.3 billion. Let's make this bold, maybe mute the color down a little bit, and not too bad. And if we want to show this one as well, let's just look for the value. Again, remember we need to add both of these up. So if we look at the sum here, it looks like it's 11.1 billion. Let's go back to our chart, and instead of creating a new text box, we can use our control trick. So hold control, drag, and this will be 11.1 billion. Alright, so the story is looking pretty clear now, but how about we literally tell the story in the title as well? Because this isn't really doing much. So let's edit this. Let's say something like digital formats dominate the music industry now. That's our main story. I'm going to press Shift Enter and say, but revenues are half of what they were in their peak. And that's our secondary story, which is what we're highlighting through our data labels here. Now let's try to drag this to our left, since again, that's where the viewers are going to look at first. Let's left align, and let's make this a little bit bigger. Make the main story bold. We can make the secondary story a little bit smaller. And let's just move our chart down just so that we can see the title clearly. Alright, one final touch that we can add here is to highlight the digital formats label in orange to match the series. And that just creates a little bit of visual order and guidance for the viewers as well. Just adjust this slightly. Much better, right? Now we're almost done, but remember that we do want to show the impact of iTunes launching in 2003. So what we can do is actually use objects to call it out here. Now, one little detail is that since we removed the rest of the years here, we can't really tell where 2003 is on this chart. But what we can actually do is select the x-axis, go to Format It, and we can add tick marks right here where it says Major Type. We can change none to tick marks on the outside, and what that's going to do is add these little tick marks on each value, regardless of whether we deleted the actual text or not. And for consistency's sake, we can do the same for the y-axis, tick marks, add them on the outside. For some reason, and I'm not sure why Excel does this, but it'll use a default blue color. We can change it to this light gray. Just make sure these two match. And there we go. So now let's call out where iTunes launched on this chart. So I'm actually going to go to Format. I'm actually going to add a line here. I'm going to hold Shift and draw it down so that it's completely vertical. And let's try to match this to 2003. So this is 2000. It's going to be 1, 2, and 3 right here. There we go. Again, hold Shift to make it taller. We can make this white and maybe dashed. All right. And final thing, let's just add an arrow here to kind of point at this line. Make it the same black color as our labels here. Use our control trick. And let's just say iTunes launches. Let me add an arrow here. We can go in Shape Outline, Arrows. Looks like it's this way. And how about that? We've got a finished visual that tells a clear and compelling story, all ready to send back to our editor so she can publish it in our magazine. Now, one final cherry on the cake that we can add is to actually save this chart as a picture. So I'm going to right click, Save as Picture, and call it something like US Music Revenues. Press Save, and let me see if I can pull it up for you guys here. How about it? Pretty cool, right? So this officially concludes our first DataVis project, and I know that we covered a lot of ground in quite a short time period, but know that all of the formatting and storytelling pro tips that we covered here will continue to be put into practice in the 3 dashboard projects. The main purpose here was to start getting our hands dirty in applying the DataVis best practices that we learned, and to showcase just how powerful Excel really is for data visualization. But next up, dashboard design, so I hope you're excited.